Shedeur Sanders shocks NFL fans after Browns vs. Bears game with a possible Cowboys move. Shedeur Sanders finally speaks out as Cowboys rumors explode after the Browns vs. Bears matchup. Cowboys fans go crazy as Shedeur Sanders addresses his future following a dramatic Browns vs. Bears game. Shedeur Sanders could be heading to Dallas? His latest comments have Cowboys fans asking serious questions. Browns' future in doubt. Shedeur Sanders sends a message that could change everything after the game. Shedeur Sanders breaks his silence on his future as Cowboys trade rumors start heating up across the NFL. The Shedeur Sanders to Cowboys rumor just got wilder after what happened following Browns vs. Bears. Now, let's get into what really happened. After the Browns vs. Bears game, all eyes turned to Shedeur Sanders. The quarterback has been surrounded by questions about his future, and suddenly, the conversation got even louder. Fans immediately started wondering if Sanders could eventually leave Cleveland and whether Dallas could actually become his next destination. But here's where things get interesting. Sanders' comments after the game sparked another wave of speculation. He didn't simply shut down the rumors, and that was enough for social media to explode. Cowboys fans started discussing what a move to Dallas could look like, while Browns fans were left wondering whether their young quarterback is truly committed to staying long-term. And there's another detail that makes this story even more interesting. The Cowboys have been connected to quarterback rumors before, and anytime a talented young player becomes available, Dallas is going to be mentioned. Sanders has the name, the confidence, and the spotlight that could make him a fascinating fit in Dallas. But does that actually mean a trade is coming? Not necessarily. Right now, the Cowboys connection is still a rumor, and there is no confirmed deal sending Shedeur Sanders to Dallas. But the fact that fans are even discussing what makes the situation even more complicated is the timing. Shedeur Sanders is still trying to establish himself in the NFL, so every comment about his future can instantly become a major storyline. One sentence can turn into thousands of posts, trade theories, and fan debates within hours. And that's exactly what happened with the Cowboys rumors. Dallas is one of the biggest markets in the NFL, and the Cowboys are constantly connected to high-profile quarterbacks. If Sanders were ever placed on the trade market, his name would naturally attract attention from teams looking for a young quarterback with upside. But the Browns would have to decide whether moving him makes sense for their long-term plans. That's the part nobody can ignore. Cleveland invested in Sanders because they believed he could develop into something special. Giving up on that plan too quickly would make little sense unless the organization had a major reason to do it. At the same time, if Sanders believes his future could be better somewhere else, the situation could become much more complicated behind the scenes. And then there's Dallas. The Cowboys already have plenty of pressure surrounding their quarterback situation, and bringing in a young player like Sanders would immediately create another huge storyline. Imagine the attention if Sanders walked into Dallas wearing the Cowboys star. Every preseason practice, every press conference, and every mistake would be analyzed. But would Dallas actually make that move? That's the question nobody can answer right now. The Cowboys would have to evaluate Sanders' development, his potential, the asking price, and whether Cleveland would even consider trading him. A deal would likely require serious negotiations, and there is still a huge difference between a rumor spreading online and an actual front office decision. Still, the speculation isn't disappearing. Every new interview, every social media post, and every comment about Sanders. Another factor that could influence the situation is how Sanders continues to perform when the pressure gets higher. In the NFL, talent alone isn't always enough. Quarterbacks have to show consistency, command the offense, and prove they can handle difficult moments without allowing outside noise to affect their game. That's why every upcoming appearance matters. If Sanders puts together strong performances, the Browns could become even more determined to keep him. A young quarterback showing progress is extremely valuable, especially when the organization believes he can become a long-term piece. In that scenario, Cleveland would have very little reason to listen to trade offers unless another team presents something almost impossible to ignore. But if his situation becomes unstable, teams around the league could start paying much closer attention. Dallas would obviously be one of the teams fans would watch, but the Cowboys wouldn't necessarily be the only possible destination. Whenever a quarterback with potential becomes available, several organizations can enter the conversation quickly. That means the Cowboys rumors could be only one part of a much bigger story. There's also the question of what Sanders himself wants. A player doesn't always control where he gets traded, but his preference can still become an important part of negotiations. If Sanders eventually makes it clear that he wants a different opportunity, teams could begin evaluating whether they can create a situation that works for everyone involved. And that's where the speculation gets complicated. The Browns could want to keep him. Sanders could want a bigger opportunity. Dallas could see potential. Another team could suddenly make an aggressive offer. One decision could completely change the direction of the story. For Cowboys fans, the biggest attraction is obvious. Sanders has already built a massive profile, and playing in Dallas would put him under one of the brightest spotlights. There is another part of this story that deserves attention, and that's the relationship between Sanders and the Browns organization. For a young quarterback, trust between the player and the coaching staff can be just as important as talent. If Cleveland continues giving Sanders opportunities and building the offense around his strengths, that could make the idea of leaving much less realistic. But if the situation changes, the conversation could look completely different. Quarterback situations can move incredibly fast in the NFL. A player can be considered part of a team's long-term plan one week, then suddenly become the subject of trade discussions after a few unexpected decisions. That's why Sanders' role, his playing time, and the Browns' approach to developing him will be closely watched. The Cowboys' situation adds another layer because Dallas is always under pressure to compete immediately. If the organization believes Sanders could become a franchise quarterback, they would have to decide whether acquiring him now is worth the cost of developing him. And development takes time. Sanders would need to learn a new offensive system, build chemistry with his teammates, and adjust to an entirely different environment. Moving to Dallas wouldn't automatically guarantee success. In fact, the pressure could be even greater because of the attention surrounding the Cowboys. That's something Sanders would have to consider carefully. At the same time, Cowboys fans could see the potential upside. Sanders has the confidence to handle big moments, and his name alone would generate enormous interest. If he developed into a reliable starting quarterback, Dallas could potentially have a young player capable of leading the offense for years. But before any of that happens, there would have to be a real reason for Cleveland to consider moving him. The Browns would likely look at his development, his production, his relationship with the coaching staff, and what kind. So right now, the Shedeur Sanders situation is still surrounded by questions. The Browns haven't confirmed any move, and the Cowboys rumors remain speculation. But one thing is clear. Every new comment, every performance, and every decision could change the conversation quickly. Could Sanders eventually leave Cleveland and become the next big quarterback story in Dallas? We'll have to wait and see. Until then, stay tuned, because this story could develop at any moment.